Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Pursuit Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Antonaire, and on today's episode, we are joined by Ryan Olsen from Whitebone Creations. Ryan is an avid outdoorsman from Southern California and someone I've been following on YouTube for a few years now. We discuss how he got started in the outdoors, fishing in Southern California, hunting trips with his family, and the ups and downs of creating a very successful YouTube channel. Please welcome Ryan Olsen. All right, so we are here, just like I mentioned in the intro, with Mr. Ryan Olsen from Whitebone Creations. Sir, it's an honor to talk to you. How are you doing today?
Man, I'm doing great, and thanks for having me here. It's funny, we have a 5-minute conversation before we get started, and then you drop my name, and I got a little nervous.
I know, right? Well, I always get
that?
nervous when the conversation leading up to the podcast and getting everything squared away is always really chill. And then, same thing here. You got to turn on that radio voice and make sure that we're doing a good job. But we're going to have fun today, man. We're going to have fun. I'm super stoked to talk to you. As always, we're here with man behind the switches, Mr. Ben Johnson.
Hey, guys.
So Ryan is joining us today from the sometimes sunny, usually sunny, Southern California. You're someone that I've stumbled across on YouTube, probably like a lot of people, well, 300,000 people to be exact, just searching for some how-to videos on your amounts. And like I've told you before and several other conversations we've had, you quickly became one of my most favorite people in the hunting industry, just your realism and, of course, the quality of the content that you're putting on YouTube. So what I'd like to do is go ahead and get started off with your background and then kind of what got you started into hunting and fishing and all that fun stuff outdoors.
Yeah, for sure. Well, again, thanks for having me here, and thanks for following. Thanks for finding me that way. And the wonderful thing about social media or sharing content like that is you get somewhere when you had no intention of doing it, right? I was just trying to put something together and send it to a friend, and people find it and you grow and you make all these special relationships through life that were unintentional. And I think that's maybe the silver lining in social media. But just wanted to cover that while you had said that. So Ryan Olsen, I'm 47 years old, happily married, 23 years, 2 beautiful kids. A boy and a girl, 22 and 18. And so I'm on that almost empty nest side of life. I grew up right here in Southern California. In life, you don't get to choose what you love, right? You either love it or you don't. And I've said that so many times that it's just so true. And I was surrounded by sportsmen growing up. Believe it or not, California itself is just full of fantastic, very conservative, hardworking sportsmen that kind of run under the radar with all the nonsense and noise you hear out of California. They just stay in their lane and hunt and fish like anybody else from any other state. So I was kind of surrounded by that. My dad hunted. His best friend, Bud, hunted, which you've probably seen in some of the hunting films. He's always been Uncle Bud to me, but there's real no blood relation. And most don't know that, but I've been all over the world with Bud. And he, for the longest time, had just taken my dad hunting. And I remember just sitting in the garage listening to, hunting stories and fishing stories. And that starry-eyed little kid, just that's all I wanted to do. Didn't care about school or sports or cars or girls. I just wanted to hunt and fish. And so when they would come back from trips, all I'd want to do is see pictures or see fish or see antlers. And of course, it was never there because back in the day, it stayed with the local taxidermist, or you filleted all your fish, or you had to wait till you finished the roll of 410 film to develop the pictures. And it was like, So from that, I kind of went the polar opposite, where no matter what I did as a sportsman growing up, whether I found a lizard or a funny looking rock or a bug, I brought everything home to these kids, right? Everything home, digital photos, and these kids were just constantly flush with, really, Dad? And I think maybe that goes back to wanting to see that on my end, and never really did. So just moving through life, that was kind of my upbringing. We fished a lot, did a dove hunt as a family. And then when I graduated high school, 93, just to give you an idea that I'm the old guy. I was always the young guy in camp, and it's just changed all at once. It's just changed. But from there, I moved to Oregon for a few months, worked for an outfit over there with my brother, directly got a job in Wyoming, just roughnecking, pulling levers, and moved to Wyoming in 94, I think it was, and almost immediately found like my place on planet Earth. Everybody that I was up there with was just fantastic sportsmen. I was essentially drilling uranium, working on the rigs, but on my off time, I was working with an outfitter out there, Jay Lesser from Wyoming Professional Hunters, who absolutely just taught me everything about Western hunting. And from there, I just fast-tracked an education into the outdoors. I hunted every single day, and I just couldn't get enough. Was there for 3 years, guiding hunters, doing my thing. Kind of fell back in love with my wife, my high school sweetheart from here, moved back home, and I've been here ever since. But I travel to Wyoming twice a year, and I don't know if that gives you backstory.
Yeah, and getting
you. That's the roundabout to where I am now.
So you mentioned, and I think this is kind of important because people, when they think of Hollywood, when they think of California, they think of Hollywood and San Francisco and all the craziness with that. Doesn't really jive with your like quote unquote hunting industry, right? So in California, and I know that you hunt there, but so you do a little fishing. I know you fish in the ports. So are you fishing locally? Can you get out to hunt? And if you do get out to hunt, like how far does it take you to get out to hunt? That kind of thing. Give us like an idea of what it is like to be a sportsman in that Southern California area.
Yeah, for sure. So that's a fantastic question. So I'm in Huntington Beach, and the easiest way to look at, which is in Orange County, and the easiest way to look at that is I'm right between LA and San Diego, right up against the coast right there. I fish a couple days a week, and I hunt a couple days a week. So spoiled is, an easy thing. I have worked my whole life to have really good access onto certain places. I'm not one of those people that is only waving the public land flag. That's the only place to hunt. There's cred there. I think that's wonderful for everybody that does, but I wanted to get into a place where I was never looking over my shoulder. I could bring my kids into a safe environment. Things like that has been just a vision for me for as long as I can remember. So I spend a lot of time up in the Eastern Sierras, which is public. I spend a lot of time up on the Tejon Ranch, which is private. I actually work there as a guide. I do very, very little guiding, maybe 2 or 3 trips a year, mostly youth hunts. But I spend a lot of time up in there helping out, whether it's odd jobs, making film, whatever. But that gives me access up there constantly. And very rarely am I pulling the trigger outside of hunting squirrels and having fun or taking the kids rabbit hunting or something like that. But most of the time I'm up there just enjoying the outdoors because that's it's what heals me. If I'm having a hard day, I'll wind up on the ranch or on the boat. And so for that, it's like a 2-hour drive from my house door to door. And I have free range of 422 square miles of, pristine. That ranch is 270,000 acres.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's kind of, I'm trying to close my eyes and visualize it, but I think it's kind of halfway between Bakersfield and LA. Is that right? Kind of in that middle area.
Yep, and closer to Bakersfield, but yes, exactly. That's where it is. And so it encompasses the Tehachapi's and all the way down to our local lakes. And it's everything you can imagine, from classic high desert to rolling grassy hills, studded oaks, to bitter, rough canyons, manzanita. It's really got it all. It's a beautiful place. And it's an expensive place to get in and access, and for that, it will forever remain this beautiful environment. So that's, that's the hunt side. For me, it's a couple hours away, and I do that at least twice a week. And then, I live in Huntington. So for me to hook up the boat and get in the water, that would take me about 10 minutes. So I'm right here at Huntington Harbor. And growing up a West Coast bass fisherman, we fished all of our local lakes. And if you guys grew up around bass fishing, Southern California is really the promised land. So I'm probably going to give you a little bit of a statistic that's off, but I'm close. I think there's only been like 25 20-pound largemouth ever caught in history, and like 18 of them were within an hour from me. So we've got big, deep reservoirs, lots of bait, fantastic genetics. And
those are the spotted bass, right? Primarily, like the giant ones that people are catching.
Well, so that's the largemouth side on the freshwater. And when the zebra mussel came in and we couldn't go from lake to lake in the same day or the same month even, it just got so frustrating. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to have to get into the salt water. So I bought a little saltwater boat, and then I started fishing the salt maybe 5 years ago, where we fished it real regular. And for that, we don't get really big fish, but we get a lot of fish. It's not uncommon to catch 60, 70, 80 fish a night with, a handful of rods in the boat. It's just an incredible fishery.
Now, how much of that do you think is contributed to the fact that the weather is so consistent? Similar to like the Florida and Okeechobee and stuff, where it's just a constant growing season for them.
A lot of it. And then, the part that's really unique about this fishery here, and I know I kind of said two things there. So talking about, the big largemouth coming out of our freshwater, but in our saltwater, in our bays and inlets and all the, LA and Long Beach Harbor was one of the largest harbors in the world. So when you bring in those big container ships or fuel ships or whatever, and you put them on the docks, they're constantly recirculating water and cooling those big motors up there. Happenings, it's kicking up all that junk that's on the ground, right? So now you're creating your own sort of currents and tides. And these three species of bass, the calico, which is technically a kelp bass, the spotted bay bass, and the barred sand bass, which is what we call our trifecta, they live in this environment, and they're opportunistic feeders. They will literally eat anything. So it's kicking up crabs and mussels and bugs and sea slugs and urchins. And I swear, if you take and put one in the live well in 10 minutes, what they puke up is like, what in the world is going on?
That's awesome.
That's awesome. And we have figured out that those big motors running creates a lot of that turbulence, and so they're actively feeding with the tides, and it's just a good place to take somebody out and get them bit, let them experience fishing in just a really unique environment, and it's better at night for whatever reason. The lights come on in the cranes, and that place is just. It's a different fishery. And the reason I don't share a lot of that fishing on film is because you don't want to blow up your spot, and not so much for me blowing up my spot, but and I have in the past, but if I posted something, I could be wrecking somebody else's spot.
Yeah.
And it's so hard to protect that environment visually that I find that it's hard to film fishing.
Yeah, and I actually showed that to Ben today too, because there was a couple where you could see like the cranes in the background and stuff. I'm like, he was like, I was like, no, man, like he fishes hardcore. And so we were checking it out, and he was like, what the heck? Like, check that out. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty wild.
So I've got a quick question for you on the saltwater species stuff. Like you said, they'll pretty much bite anything, but like if a guy like me that's never fished in California, if I go out there, like what kind of tackle should I be throwing? Or just anything? Like, do you guys throw swim baits or crank baits, or?
You could show up tomorrow, and just with the information I just told you, you could get bit like the next guy, having some good fish sense and good fishability. So if you look at you in the summer months, you can catch them on fast baits like crank baits, jerk baits, swim baits, and stuff like that. But you're going to run traditional freshwater bass gear. So I'm a little bit unique in the fact that I fish 8-pound line, mostly spin tackle, and everything's identical because as kids put rods down, they're like, which is mine? I'm like, just pick up any rod because they're all the same. It's made it easier, working with younger kids. But soft plastics, in my opinion, you can go anywhere on planet Earth and produce fish. And because they're eating these little chunks of goo down in the bottom of the ocean, we fish a lot of that. So I fish lightweights, 1/4 ounce, 3/8 ounce. We throw it up, and the perfect scenario is I throw into a general area and I let it kind of get pushed around like something natural down there. The second that I can feel that bait moving inside of current or moving inside of flow, it's just a matter of seconds for your bit. When everything goes ebb tide, goes slack, goes really still, that's when the fishing gets real tough, and then we continue to downsize. We also use an app called Tides for Fishing. Tides, the number 4, and then fishing. And I can tell you when those fish are going to eat within 30 minutes. And if it's a day where we don't have a big enough swing, we just don't fish.
That's a great resource to have.
Oh, it is literally clockwork. And it's one of those things that's very, very unique about the saltwater, is just having that tool when water pulls in or water pulls out, that's when they're going to eat. Like you and I wake up in the morning, in a couple hours, we're going to eat. We're going to eat a couple hours before we go to bed. It's just the fish are the exact same way. There's a certain time of day where nothing's moving. They're going to relax and recover, like you and I going to bed at night. And I'm always trying to relate it to kids like, well, how come we're not getting bit right now? Well, you know why. I just told you, right? Everything went slack. And everything's always been, hunting and fishing has always been, I imagine like you guys, but it's been a puzzle to me, and I love to figure out the puzzle. A good, and I've said this before too many times too, but the difference between a good fisherman and a good hunter, in my opinion, is the guy that realized why. So if we're just fishing down the bank and I pitch a jig up into the shade of a log and I get bit, then I realize, hey, I was like 6 foot of water, that fish was laying right in the shade. Let's run around the lake, hunt stumps and shade, and go duplicate that. Because yes, there can be a random fish, but if you're identifying why, you're going to be a better angler, a better hunter constantly. If you're like, oh, every time I step into this pile of pines and there's a big opening, I find elk. Well, no surprise, brother. You might want to write that down, memorize it, and then go hunt a bunch of holes in the, that sort of thing. That's why I think like tools like hunting sheds and understanding where these animals winter, and those tools they're telling you so much, that you'll learn in the fall what food source they're on that time of year. And I get, like so many others, I get nerdy when it comes into that because I want to be able to be effective and I want to be able to know all those things. And anyway, that's another thing that led me to doing skulls. I couldn't afford my own. But when I started to get into the noggin of that critter, sounds crazy. When I started to get in there, I started to learn so much about the anatomy of the animal, the way it was put together. And I know it seems crazy, but I was learning so much by doing that process that I think it made me just a better sportsman in general.
So changing gears just a little bit, let's come off the coast of California and let's head up northeast of you to Wyoming. Obviously, you said that you worked there as a roughneck for a little while. As someone who has guided there, and then I know you hunt there at least twice a year, and frequently there, like, is there a favorite species? I mean, Wyoming is an opportunity state for a lot of different species. What's your favorite species to hunt up there? And then kind of to counter that, do you have like a most memorable trip so far going up to Wyoming?
No, they all blur, but I think sometimes the freshest ones are the most special. So this year, I think you've probably seen the film, but my daughter harvests just a fantastic.
You took you knew that was my second question, didn't you? That was my follow up. Yeah, let's brag on her a little bit because that was an absolute stud.
Yes, and it was. So to cover the original question, my favorite animal on planet Earth is a mule deer. I will forever. I think that's a West Coast guy thing, right? That is just kind of our mantra out here. The mule deer are special because they're kind of unique to us. But the truth is, my favorite animal to hunt is probably a pronghorn, an antelope, or as you will hear on your hunt coming up this year, everybody just refers to them as goats. I know that people get wound up about it. It's not derogatory. It's just what we call them. But it is the perfect midday hunt, a very alert, very savvy animal that is just, it's just a kick in the pants playing cat and mouse with those things all day. And to judge one from the other is like, it's impossible unless you see a giant, right? So my rule has always been find the one you love, right? And I fall in love with all of them.
I know.
I've been so lucky, right? I've been able to hunt and harvest some 40 antelope in my day, because when I lived there, you could shoot 2 bucks at the time, and I love it. And if it wouldn't matter if I shoot a giant, the next week I'd shoot a baby, or not a baby, but you know what I mean. But a younger one, I don't care. I love hunting them, and I think they're fantastic table fare, contrary to what everybody says. It is by far my family's favorite protein.
And so let's get into that muley hunt, because I was trying to find that video for Ben, but I think it was kind of, if I'm not mistaken, was that partnered up with like another whitetail hunt?
No, it's kind of buried in this year's Wyoming hunt.
Yeah, I was trying to find it and to show Ben, because I was like, man, you have to check this out. And I knew I watched it maybe like a couple months ago, I think, at this point. But
I think it got demonetized, so it's really tough to find, which is very typical for me. But yeah, so we've just had life's ups and downs. You can imagine with a teenage girl, just social media and COVID and everything else. And so I'll do anything I can to just get her away with me. And so I put her in for tags this year. I leased this place in Wyoming, just a fantastic landowner. This property's 40,000 acres, and I've now had it for 10 years. And we've just seen the potential. We've seen how everything has grown, just playing by the rules and killing the right age class animals and letting animals walk. And so I got there October 2nd or 3rd or something like that, right at the beginning of the season. It's only a 15-day season, 1st through the 15th. And it was super hot, like in the 90s. And we just hunted our tails off for, I think, 4 full days, and never saw a mature deer. We saw some deer that we would have been happy with, but at the end of the day, I was really hoping to get an opportunity, at a big branch antlered deer. We saw a bunch of fork and horns and had some opportunities. We would have been happy there, but we were just patient. And then that last morning, in the exact same place we've looked for 4 full days, this was day 5, we look off into this bowl, and there's just a plus size, beautiful mule deer feeding with some does. And I'm like, oh my goodness, Lindsay, we got to go right now. And she was in the back of the Ranger, like using the restroom. And I'm looking through the binos of this deer, like going, wrap her up. It's time to go. We got to go.
Time to go.
So, yeah. So we bail off this ridge and kind of fish our way through this creek. And then when we pop up, we're like 130 yards from this deer, and this deer's feeding. And, the part that I don't show in the film, that's kind of the craziest part of the story, is she gets on the stakes, and she's a fantastic shooter. Both my kids have had incredible confidence when it comes to shooting, and I don't know where it comes from, but it's crazy. So anyway, she's like, I can't see him. It's so blurry, Dad. It's so blurry. I'm like, honey, it's probably just dust in that scope. Can you see the one on the far right? Anyway, she pulls up, shoots, down the deer goes. Everything's great. We celebrate, take pictures. And then like 3 days later, I'm going to hunt a whitetail, and I pick up that scope, and it is like looking through a stained glass window. It was 6 full cranks out of focus. So I think putting it in the case and out of the case was just maybe rotating it. And I called her and I said, honey, I'm so sorry. I thought it was just dusty. So she shot that thing, not having a clear view. She could see it well enough, but it was a typical dad moment where I'm like, just do it. What do you doing?
What do you mean? I'm not wrong. It has to be something, not my fault.
Yeah, exactly.
Meanwhile, she's shooting like completely out of focus.
Oh, right. Yeah, it was so bad. I was like, oh no, man. Oh no. But that deer's beautiful. We never did score that deer, but that deer's 28 inches wide and it's got 6-inch eye guards and it's weighty and old, and we're guessing that deer about 6.5 years old. And just an incredible first year, sometimes maybe too much of a first year, but that's
Oh, that was
that's
her. That
typical.
was her first. That was her first muley.
Her first mule deer. Her
And
first mule
she
deer.
got a 5.5.
Yeah, 5x5 hook eye guards, and she's killed a few whitetails with me, but that's her first mule deer, and she's officially hooked. Can't get enough.
Oh, I can't blame her.
Surprising.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, is she going to, in typical Olsen fashion, is she going to skull mount it, or are we going to actually get that thing caped out, or did you cape it out?
No, she comes from the generation of skulls or nothing. And part of it is we're in a little tiny house here. I haven't mounted anything in probably 20 years now. We have no room. It's so small here, and I put like this little shed in the backyard, like get everything out of the house. But and then again, I've just taken to the Euros for whatever. I know it seems crazy that because I'm like the skull guy, but I like them. And I'm not so much missing the hide because I kind of stay in this lane of deer, elk, and antelope. Right. I have a few other species, but those hides that I'm familiar with, and I know. Maybe if there was a zebra or something in there, I'd want all that color. But
Well, and those species lend themselves really well to the Euro mount too. Like when you have this muley that looks like a tree branch, and especially like an elk, and then of course like the pronghorn and antelope stuff, man, like that they're just so beautiful just to have like on a nightstand or something like that. So
yeah, that black and white contrast on skulls with them.
Exactly.
It's just cool. Yeah.
So one thing I kind of wanted to touch on too, and this is another thing I showed Ben today, but as a man of faith myself, one thing I really enjoy, and one thing that really got me tied onto you is like your respect and your reverence that you pay for the critters that you chase. And I don't think you do it so much on the actual how-to videos, but on those hunting videos, it just has like a really nice, clean, calming feel. It's not like super high, super low. And then you always end everything with a prayer. So I just we don't have to talk on it too much, but I did just want to bring that up for everyone too, that just like the respect that this man pays for everything is out of this world.
Thank you for that. That comes from the just time of reflection, right? So when you're on a hunt, I use this analogy too much too, but we film weddings because there's so much going on at the time for the bride and groom that you can't remember. You're getting shuffled from here to there, and pictures and glad handing, and it's crazy. And 10 years later, you look back and go, oh, that was a pretty special day, right? So it's very much the same to me on a hunt where we're traveling 20 hours, we're buying road food, we're hustling to beat daylight, we're packing. There's so much going on, and you're loving it, but you can't get your head around it. So filming it, which I would encourage everybody to do, but filming it, you come home and you lay it together, there's just a completely different feel to it for me. So my style of film, generally speaking, is slow for say a younger generation. And I think the reason that is because as I'm building that film, I'm reflecting on, what a special time that was in the field with friends or whatever, or just being blessed to have this experience. And, being a man of faith too, God did give us dominion over these animals to utilize and respect, right? I say it all the time. And that means just that, right? Take what you can eat, live within the laws that we as sportsmen put in place to protect these animals in perpetuity, to, utilize the surplus and make sure everything is there. So I feel obligated. And to be honest, it's my favorite part of the film is just to close in prayer, just to be respectful for the experience. This is who we are. I get people every once in a while will put, hey man, you got to get rid of that religion stuff or you'll never grow. I don't see it as that. I see it as complete and total respect for the time of field and for what we got out of it. And I've been in, and this is the part that's kind of crazy to me, but every camp I've ever been in, whether it's New Zealand, Argentina, South Africa, Turkey. It doesn't matter where it is or what the religion is. The people in camp will say grace over the meal. You know, every different variety of religion, and it's totally understood. So I don't know if I took that too far, but essentially everybody understands that it's a respectful thing. It's not pushing religion on somebody. That's the fastest way to push somebody away. If you can just live a good example and say, hey man, what's different about you? Well, then there's your opportunity. But if you're standing on the street corner with the Jesus Saves sign, you're going to be pushing people away, right? So there's just a way to do that. And I think in the films, it's a beautiful way to close in respect. If I had an argument for a lot of the film that goes out there is, man, find a way to close your film. Find a way to just end it. Like, it doesn't have to be obviously what I'm doing, but it's not over with a kill shot, right? There's so much more to it. And anyway, thanks for recognizing that. But I love that part of it. And I haven't found a way to put it into a how-to skull cleaning video. There's a whole bunch of hip hop music in there. We're blowing me up.
Those are that's good segue, because obviously you don't get to almost 300. I think you're at like 297,000 right now, so you don't get there overnight. But let's jump right into the YouTube and the success that you've had there. I know you told me in the past initially starting out but we'll get into the growth of the YouTube channel, and then I don't think we can talk about your YouTube channel without talking about the challenges that I know you've experienced over the last couple of years regarding the content of, obviously, of what you're doing.
Yeah. So it's man, it's sure has changed. So, early on, we were just sharing hunts, and I had a good friend of mine that said, hey man, you ought to do one on cleaning a pig. And I'm like, what? Because I had been doing skull work for friends and family for years and years and years. And he said, I think you should do it so you can send it to me, because I'm going to try and do it at home. Anyway, I did. I put the film up, made it public, and it got a tremendous amount of traction with no real tags or anything, just how to clean a pig skull. And it was like, wow, that's crazy. It's got like 10 times the amount of views that everything else did. And then back in the day, that would be like, I don't know, 700 or 800 views. And he's like, hey man, you ought to put up a deer cleaning film. So I'm like, whatever. So I put up a deer cleaning film, and then that one got like 1,500 views. And I'm like, well, maybe, just maybe, there's people that are yearning for this information. Even though the process is literally identical with all these critters, I have this resource. I could share this resource. It is a bit of a side business to me, but there's plenty for everybody. Why wouldn't I help somebody out? And so I just started to put and add species with no intention of anything ever happening other than people don't search how to clean a skull. People search how to clean an antelope, how to clean a raccoon. So I'm like, well, I might as well, just as I get them, just put them up. Matter of fact, today I'm going to post coyote skull cleaning videos, because I got 4 coyotes yesterday and somebody requested it. I have one from way back, but it's lumped in with bobcats and everything else. I'm like, we'll do a coyote film. So anyway, it grew. And for that, I made some friends through the business that are very successful in the YouTube space. We did some collaboration stuff, and I really got a big shot in the arm from Robert Arrington over at Deer Meat for Dinner. He had shot a gator. He had given me a shout out. He's got a huge following. I mean, gigantic. And it was a really good shot in the arm. And then I got a bunch of hate, and that was where the growth came from. So, and I think it started with this fox cleaning video, just how to clean a red fox or gray fox maybe. And somebody shared it with, I don't know, enough haters to where I just got piles and piles and piles of subscribers that are haters, for lack of better terms, keyboard warriors. And the fastest way to grow is hate. And that's why you see people always poking the bear and putting up stuff that's a little bit too far out of line, because they're searching for that attack me because I'm going to grow, So anyway, I just stayed in that lane. just did what I did, stayed true to what it was. And as much as I would much rather be known for hunting films, the reality is most people are watching for the skull cleaning. And then there's so many people that have just put in comments that they're just generally grateful, whether they started their own business, whether they just wanted to do grandpa's old deer or their daughter's first buck, whatever. And they were able to follow a process and get it done and then gain that confidence and a skill set. And for that, I'll never stop doing it. If I can help somebody with a skill set that I got, well, then wonderful. Thank you, Lord, for this tool and this platform. And so, yeah, that's how that got to where it is. And in the last 2 years, really, it's just almost come to a screeching halt. So I am growing, but the views are cut down to maybe 1/100th of what they used to be. The monetization piece is down. And essentially is what happened to YouTube is the whole adpocalypse a while ago, where there was some really poor content being put up on some of the big brands. Or let me rephrase. There was ads that were going on inappropriate content.
Yeah, inappropriate. I actually literally just heard the latest Meat Eater literally just was talking about that with Tom Miranda, I believe. And so it's just really it's really timely that you're even saying that, because I think I can't remember how it worked out, but there was like 500 hours of content every hour. There's like 500 hours worth of content. Yeah, every minute there's 500 hours of content added to YouTube. That's crazy.
Yeah. And I'm not the guy, a lot of guys are like, oh, I hate YouTube, blah, blah, blah. I love YouTube. They're only trying to do what's right for them. And so it started there to clean up where they were putting their ads. And then it got to where there was the kid program where you couldn't market to kids because, kids will click 1,000 times. And so they gear film designed around kids, and it's very difficult to see like little innuendos or something they put on for kids that's inappropriate. So they just made it to where kid content could not be monetized. And then they had to cast a bigger net, and it was shocking, inappropriate, firearm related. And so when you upload, as you guys know, you click these things saying my video identifies firearms, right? And it's done in a professional, whatever it is, right? And you're kind of disclosing, policing yourself, and that's all good. But most of my content, right, skinning and all that, just falls into that inappropriate content. So I'm almost always policing myself out of making any money there. What they don't want to see, what I've tested, they don't want to see any sort of skinning. If something has an eyeball and a plush face, and then that gets removed, that is wholly inappropriate for the younger audience. As to where if you're a sportsman, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, especially as something that looks like someone's pet. I think I've heard you say that before too. Like then that might tie back into that red fox or
100%,
something like that.
Yeah, all that charismatic critter, like the coyote one. We'll get there too, but I'll put a skinning piece in the app version of it. But on YouTube, you're just going to see a fox face, and then you're going to see a skinned head go in the pot. Like there'll be no skinning in there, just because that's anybody, and we're all on the same page. You could just not click, but that's not how this world goes. So YouTube is just, in my opinion, they've just throttled everything. And then back in the day, it was very much tag related. So whatever your tags were, that's how you got found. So I would use tags like skulls, skull cleaning, and then intentionally I would spell skull wrong because there's people who will search skull wrong, right? So if I'm the only guy that has SCULL instead of SKULL, I'm going to get it. And so anyway, as we started to trend down the line, I would take anything that was, as we're trained on YouTube, right? As you watch these things to grow. Once I thought I could make a little money in the space, I thought, oh man, I'll trend along. So you would take terms like, Justin Bieber or, Fortnite or whatever was cool at the time. And to be real honest with you, that when I got everything kicked out from underneath me is everything was going on with Trump, and I was like, I'll use the tagline Trump. I'll use any of them. There was literally things that would say this is the tagline, And the day I put Trump as a tag is the day that I got my feet kicked out from underneath me. So
That's wild.
who knows, right? Who knows if there was an
Yeah.
agenda, a not agenda, or whatever. So I'm just riding it out. I don't dislike them. I love that I still have an audience there. I still love that there's a platform I can share at. It's their house, their rules. And so I'm going to play according. And if it changes and we can go back, great. Otherwise, I had to find another avenue to share what my audience wanted to share or wanted to see. And so that's what spun me into creating the Whitebone Creations app, where I can put up whatever content I want with no sort of rules, right?
Oh, for sure. And I actually, there's a few homesteaders that I follow, like on the East Coast in North Carolina, and they process their own meat birds in their house. They're raising 100 so meat birds a year, right, for their own family's needs and to fill their freezer and to fill their friend's freezer. But they did the same exact thing where they're having this issue of, well, we can't show cleaning day videos, or what we do show, we're really limited, no blood, no disembowelment or anything like that. So they went to this app thing as well. And so, yeah, go ahead and take the floor on talking about why you going into the creation of the app and kind of how that's transpired.
Yeah. So, and you know what, and it's not surprising that they did. And so many have, like so many of the, are you guys old enough to remember Roger Ragland?
I don't know. That doesn't ring a bell.
No, it doesn't ring a bell with me either. Sorry.
When I met you, so you guys are just young enough. So Roger Ragland is this legend whitetail killer, right? I think he's from the Midwest. Crazy guy, on television for 35 years. And then you guys know who Randy Newberg is, that plays in the space now.
Oh, of course.
Best track guy.
Of course.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Randy Newberg is really the poster boy for this, right? So Vimeo or whoever, my app is with Vimeo, but essentially they reached out to the sportsman community that has a little bit of a following and says, hey, I got a direct phone call. Hey, are you tired of getting pushed around? Do you want a place you can share your original content? Essentially, it's a paywall, so people will subscribe to your content. You get to make a little coin. With the following that you have, if you were to move 1%, it would probably be worth more than your annual salary. And it's like, whoa, really? Because the way it is now, I make the exact same amount of money right now that I had with 500 followers to 300,000. There's no difference in what I would get monthly.
Through
YouTube, Google AdSense, and that could be with 10 million watch minutes. So it's just, and it has to do with all my stuff being demonetized. So anyway, the app build is a substantial fee, and you build per platform. So essentially, because it was so expensive, I just chose to do Apple and Android. The others are like Roku, Google Chrome, whatever. There's like 6 of them. And what Vimeo does, essentially, they build the app. They give you a place to do it. They handle all the billing and everything. So you would put your app up for $9 a month or $75 a year. People subscribe, and then they've got this exclusive content that's running no ads, no agenda, no filter. It's a smaller community, so I could communicate with these people, anybody that's followed. It's a really, really cool idea. I don't think it's possible to move 1% of your following, but it was worth a go. So I did. I'm still working through some of the pitfalls, I don't really know how to respond on the app just yet. So I'm learning through all that, but ultimately every video gets uploaded in 2 places, and I'm putting up twice as much content on the app that I am on YouTube. And I've focused hard on, we may have talked about this too, but I focused hard on, I was successful with the skull cleaning on YouTube, and then they changed it. But a new hunter, somebody that's new to hunting, he's not afraid of killing an animal. He's not afraid of getting in the woods and being cold. He's not afraid of any of that. What he's afraid of, most of the time, and especially young girls, is that they kill this animal and then they don't know how to do the rest. They're intimidated by the gutting, the quartering. And if you're in a place like West where you can't drive a pickup or a four-wheeler or whatever, that animal's going to come out on your back. That's a whole other scare. They don't want to waste anything. They don't want to get in trouble. So I've always been passionate about the education side when it comes to what happens after the shot. So I thought I would take the app and move it in that space. So essentially, you're going to get a how to gut an antelope, how to cut and quarter an antelope, how to all these things. And then the same things for a mule deer, for a whitetail, for a coos deer. I know it's all the same, and you know it's all the same, but people are only going to search by the species they're hunting. We've done it with pigs. And so I'm going to take all 70 species and we're going to do formal gutting. We just did one on a bison. And I think there's 7 or 8 of them in there now. And although they're similar, what I'm trying to encourage is there's no wrong way to do it. You have to get started. Here's the general anatomy, right? Food goes in the front, food goes out the back, places to cut. And then, try and avoid cutting that stomach lining. Other than that, it's a pull and tear. Get in there and do it. Don't be afraid. This is what you were designed to do. So I'm taking that approach. And I'm trying to continue putting up a film a week on YouTube as well, just to stay engaged with that audience. Because the last thing I want to do is lose them. And I need them, if they're interested, if they're financially in a position to do it, I need them to migrate. But I get so many people like, I don't want to pay for it. Well, then don't. I would never want you to pay for it if you don't want to. Like, don't, yeah. Right?
It was funny because I remember you transitioning, and that was like we were kind of on the groundwork of getting this set up, and I knew right from the bat when we were getting the podcast set up that if possible, I would love to have you on. And then we started talking about it, and I think that's right around the time that you were really trying to truly promote the app, like through your actual YouTube videos. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna actually I get what he's getting ready to do, but I want to wait until I actually talk to you and have a full conversation about it to really get it. Because look, Ben and I are from Ohio. I've never quartered a mule deer out. I've never quartered a whitetail out. I've gotten it, brought the four-wheeler back, got it, and drove it to the processor or to the house, whatever have you. So to learn that stuff, I think that's where the value is, because you're not going to find that. You may find some videos on YouTube still if you search, but to find more of a in-depth how to, and with the app platform being able to communicate, that's going to be huge.
Yeah. And then the other part that's really nice is say you were in a spot, crossed a big creek, big river, whatever, and you can't get it out and you're going to take it out on your back, right? Which that's very much the norm out there. And I don't want, I had somebody say one time, somebody made a gripe about doing that. I said, what a fantastic resource. I would do that on the West if I could get a vehicle, always, right? But let's just say you had to do it. With the app, you can download the film so you have them on your phone. And I have a pig processing or a pig gutting film that's been up for 6 years. It's got almost 1 million views. To this day, it gets comments like, hey, I watched this play, stop, rewind back and forth 4 times as I gutted my pig. I can't thank you enough. Because that's how today's world has gone. We're all learning from our phones. Every single one of us, 85% of the American population has a smartphone in their pocket. It's the easiest way to teach, especially this newer generation. You can do it in your most private space. I always joked, it's like the little girl that wants to put on makeup, but she's too embarrassed to do it. So she goes to YouTube and she practices with some kid online, and she's got it. And that's comfortable and safe for her. It's no different to a guy that needs to quarter up a whitetail in the field because he's in a tangle that he can't get a four-wheeler to or whatever. And yes, of course, you drag, but I think it's a great skill to have, even if you're not using it all the time. Do I think a butcher is going to do a better job of processing your meat than you? Yes, I do. I know people run this mantra all the time. Oh, I cut my own meat. That's fine. I still think they do a better job. That's fine. But you can at least get it home, get it in the freezer, get it in the cold box a couple days if you can't get to the processor. Anyway, so that's part of the tools that's there. And then everything that's on YouTube and then some is on the app. So everything that you watched over there is now here with no ads. And then there's quite a bit of film that's got more stuff to it. Like we did an ibex hunt in Turkey, and we had to cut out a lot of the processing of the ibex. It's in the app, and you get to see this dude taking a hatchet to this ibex. You're like, dude, like this precision cuts with an. You're like, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. It's awesome.
Segueing just a little bit back to the YouTube channel. So obviously you've had a ton of critters. I love it when you're doing the drying and you're getting ready to do the mop and glow on them. You can see all the bones in the jars, like it's some like dorm, like some college biology class. But
Right.
You've had a ton of critters. My favorite personally has definitely has to be the Jacob's ram. If anyone who hasn't seen a Jacob's ram, that is like the coolest looking, freakiest looking thing ever. Highly recommend Googling that or going and watching one of Ryan's videos. But what's been your favorite like skull so far to look clean? Like what's your favorite species right now when you get done? Just, I mean, I know you love all of them, but if you had to pick one.
I think the coolest looking skulls are always the cats, just because they wind up being these perfectly round, like baseball size skulls with teeth. I think they're just like no question about it, I think that the cats are the coolest skulls, but I'm always excited when I get something like Wolverines or Martins or wolves or whatever. I'm working with Game and Fish right now, trying to get my hands on a seal. I don't want to keep it. I just want to clean it on film and give it back to them for hunter safety or whatever. But seals look like bears. I mean, just like grizzly bears, right? They're crazy. And we see a lot of dead seals in the harbor, whether it's shark attacks or whatever. But it's a federally protected aquatic game mammal, so you're just not scooping them up and washing them on film. So, but I love all that stuff. The number one request right now is a horse skull, and I just don't know anybody got a dying horse. So
I wouldn't think that would be the one. That's funny.
You know, the number two is a human skull. Thousands and thousands and thousands of requests, and I can't figure out if they're joking or if they're serious, and so I just kind of like
I'll leave that one to somebody else.
I'll just throw my
comment.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I'm just gonna throw my favorite in there too. I like the beaver.
The beaver, yeah, the beaver's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
Was the beaver? Did we do the beaver in the crock pot, or did I boil it? Do you remember?
I don't remember. I'm just looking on Instagram, and the beaver with just the different colors on the front teeth and everything.
Those bright orange tusks. Yeah. You know, the crazy part about a beaver is if you laid a beaver skull next to a porcupine skull, other than the size, you can't tell the difference. I've got some skulls in here that I should just send you photos of that I didn't get a chance to clean them, but I have them. So when we were in South Africa, you know, just like us shooting prairie dogs on the West Coast or ground squirrels or whatever, you guys shooting gophers or whatever, just your varmints, that's what they do with the monkeys, because there's just tons of them. And they said Americans don't like shooting monkeys. I'm like, this American does. So anyway, but we saved those monkey skulls. And then there's an animal over there called a dussie or a hyrex, which is a rock rabbit, and its closest relative is an elephant. And it is a crazy looking skull. And they have an animal over there called a spring hare that looks like a cross between a kangaroo and a jackrabbit, and smallest lungs of any animal in the world. You can run them down and catch them, but their skulls are just wild. And I would love to travel and do skull work all over the place to kind of show people the different, I mean, because it's one thing to see a finished skull, but it's another thing to watch it actually get from critter to skull. And I just think it'd be so fun to just travel the globe and, you know, knock out these cool little critter skulls. And anyway,
those would get a lot of views for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, so
yeah, I'm sure.
What and we've kind of touched on this loosely, but basically, like, what cleaning I know the deer one I think has over 1 million. I know the alligator one's probably close to pushing 3 million at this point. But like, what cleaning videos do you think do the best in terms of interaction, like either like comments, good or bad, or just like straight up viewership? Do you typically find like one particular species does well, probably like whitetail or elk or something like that, or is it get into some of the crazy stuff?
It's always big. So if it's really, really big, they can't get enough. Everything that's gigantic has got several million views. So the alligator kind of is maybe the anomaly, but I have this longhorn one that was covered in maggots. That one's got a couple million views.
Was that the deadhead?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that one.
I've got a couple of elk videos that are in there, you know, from the ranch. For example, Rogan's Bull's in one of those, and people just love them because they're so big. And then we get moose, tons, but there's one video that's just really strange. It's just a regular old black Hawaiian ram, and it's got like 5 point some million views. And the difference, I still can't figure it out, but the difference is everything was like how to clean an X, how to clean an X. This one was skull cleaning, whatever.
Oh yeah, just
so
title.
So I recently changed to see if it made a difference, and of course it doesn't. But they like the big stuff. So moose, elk, deer. I have one in there called, you know, it's a 600-pound pig. It's a big, like, domestic whatever. People love that one because the head is bigger than my chest. And so, yeah, they like big. That's the thing. And I've got so much stuff lined up that's coming. Like, I got a buddy that gave me that deadhead longhorn. He's got one. He says it's 3 times that size. He said that it's got like 12-inch circumference base. It's like a big Watusi breed. And he said this, you know, he's gonna die any day. I'm like,
yes.
call me when he does.
No doubt. So,
and it may be one of those ones where hooking a truck to the horns to smack. Who knows, man? It's big.
So this is kind of an all-encompassing question. I know we kind of talked about this a little bit before. I know you're not into it for like the notoriety or the clout, but I don't know if people listen, but you did mention the word Rogan. There's only one Rogan that I think I know of. Typical audience does too. And we don't necessarily have to focus so much on him. But in general, how does it feel to, you know, just be a guy who, you know, is clearly just doing it because you love to do it, into this part now where you kind of have this, I use the word influence lightly, but, or in air quotes, but you have like this influence or this kind of like notoriety in terms of the quality of work that you do with these skulls?
That part's all great, and it's just one of those things that just happened, right? And I think you gotta never ever ever let any of that go to your head. I did mention the Rogan thing. We talked about a little bit earlier on. So, you know, he comes up and hunts, Joe Rogan hunts elk on the Tejon Ranch every single year with a bow. And he loves it. And then my relationship and then proximity with the ranch, I wind up getting his elk, and then we typically coordinate. And but just him as a character, he's so genuine, so crazy generous, and just truly loves it. And to have him within this space, helping hunters, working with hunters, just helping us spread the right message is huge.
It's his work is his work for the hunting industry here in the last few years, especially with Dudley and stuff lately, has just been like, I think it's unmeasured. Yeah, gigantic is the right word. It's just like, it's helped so much for sure.
I have a good example of my cousin. He never really liked the hunting, just couldn't stand it. And him and his wife listened to. And I shouldn't say couldn't stand it. It wasn't for him. Him and his wife listened to everything Rogan ever did, and he's full blown now, wants to hunt. He's like, I just got a different message. I'm like, your cousin couldn't do it for you, but Rogan did, and
right?
He just laughed. So, but it was good, and I have no issues talking about Joe. I'm just the guy that I'm not going to take, like, say, my platform and then blast Joe's name looking for me to gain notoriety or credibility because of something. That stuff always comes around and finds you, which is nice. And again, I think Joe identifies too, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I think he identifies the people that jump on what he built for their own good. And I think it's, for me personally, it's nice to have his cell number and to be able to text him, and for him to know that is safe with me, right? It's not going anywhere. And so I don't know. I think I've always tried to just stay in that lane, because he's been so good and generous to me as a person, but to this industry. The only time I ever really text him is to say, "Hey, I got your elk done," or, "Man, the podcast you did with Ornella it's so powerful, and just thank you for all you do." And he responds. It's crazy. And so, yeah,
It's awesome, man.
that's awesome. And so and I'm not really so much shy about talking about it, as I'm just trying not to.
No.
I'm trying not to make it like I'm somebody special because of Joe, if you know what I mean.
Oh, for sure. And we had a conversation when I first called you about getting on the podcast, about just not letting your influence and not letting your, what you built get to your head, and stay grounded. I mean, I know I was, here I am, just a guy from Central Ohio, and we called, and you answered on the first ring and was like, "Hey, Jordan, what's up?" And I was like, whoa, like, this guy's real. Like, you know what I mean? And for real, I mean, just sitting out in the truck talking, and you could tell that, you're not about that. So, but I think, it is warranted too, that like, you deserve the credit that you have a little bit too, because you're, like I said, again, you're putting together work that's just great, you know what I mean? And you're coming about it in the right way.
Well, I appreciate that more, and you hear all the time, people meet, like, say they meet like a celebrity type, and like, "Man, he's just a regular guy." And I think that's important, that people stay that way. And if you ever start to become a character of yourself, then, oh man, it's just not. I think it was Johnny Cash or somebody said that, like, never become a character of yourself. And I always kind of resonated with me. And I always like the saying, "Well done is better than well said." The people that are always kind of talking themselves up a little bit, and people will find it. If you're a good person and you're producing a good product and you're genuine, there's no fast track way to get a real following. You can buy followers, you can buy looks, you can do stupid stuff, but that's just that stuff just burns out so fast. Just burns out so fast. And then again, I wanted to build content that my kids could look back on at an older age and look at their dad and not so much be maybe embarrassed of them, but hopefully proud of what they built. But at least it's honorable. And I wanted, even though there is some skinning and some blood and things like that, I wanted it to be family content. There is not a swear word on any film ever produced here, not recorded on any podcast, like, never. And that's not to say I haven't or don't swear on occasion. I'm just never going to be that person publicly, because I don't want to be,
Yep.
And maybe it's a generation thing. I don't know, but that's where I'm at.
No, you're good. I know we could probably go on about a whole nother thing. You didn't get the opportunity to say every hole and every orifice, but what kind of out of the box question, where did the fart come from? And Ben doesn't know what I'm talking about, but you know what I'm talking about. This is an oddball question. I wasn't planning on asking you, but for the video, it cracks me up.
Dude, there's no way around it. Farts are hilarious. They will always I don't care who you are. Like, you could be they're hilarious. And so in my professional career, well, I've always just made fart sounds, right? Because I think it's a crack up, and I'm a bit of a producer. So we just started closing the film, because for a while there, it was like your retention would die off about 7 minutes into a film or whatever. And I watched something a while back, maybe 5 years ago, that said you need to have a consistent ending, something that people will stay for. And so I just made a stupid fart sound one time, and then there was a comment about it, and then the comments started being, "I just stayed for the fart," and I'm like, oh man. Sometimes I forget to put it in, but I could watch anything, like on YouTube or Instagram, anything, and I get a fart in it. I'm like, oh, you won. We are buddies forever. Right?
Yeah, no, Ben, I didn't say anything that to Ben, but it was in the back of my head. I was like, do I ask him or not? But no, I just think it's hilarious, because it just gives a little. I mean, and here's the way I look at it, but your content to some people can just be so heavy in terms of like what it is that you're doing. I mean, seeing an eyeball pull it out and cutting, whatever. And so I think it just gives it like a little, just a little quirk at the end, just to kind of make it all well and good. So,
yeah, I opened one time with a fart. I don't know if you remembered that, but
Yep.
literally the film opens with them like, can we cut that out? And of course it's stupid because it's only me, right? I'm recording. And the comments are still my favorite. Did my man just blow whatever in the beginning? And I'm like, I love it. Hilarious.
Well, this whole show has kind of been about the YouTube channel and your social media channels, but just to kind of reiterate, where can everyone find you? What can they search for, especially like the app and YouTube, like what it is that they need to go. And of course, we'll put everything down in our show notes, but if you want to go ahead and get your little spiel of where people can find you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm everything Whitebone Creations. So in any platform that's like Instagram or YouTube or your app store, Android or iPhone, essentially just Whitebone Creations will get you there. I get questions all the time too, and I probably should have told you, but the name Whitebone came from in the skull trade trying to always accomplish that white bone look. And so anybody that knows me, it's hilarious because Whitebone should really be 2 words, but I made it 1 word. And anyway, and then Creations is just didn't pigeonhole me into being one thing. I could make scrotum koozies. I could make some white skulls.
Scrotum. Or the antler tree. The little antler flower thing, just like little cool stuff like that,
Nonsense, I call it. Ryan Nonsense. I'm constantly doing stuff like that.
That's awesome.
So,
well, man,
yeah, Whitebone Creations.
Sweet. Whitebone Creations. All right, man. Well, I know that we could probably talk for at least another 30, 45 minutes, probably even longer than that, but I'll let you get back going. It's been an honor to have you on here. I can't wait to talk to you some more. And, sir, I just appreciate you coming on.
Man, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you guys. I think the honor's mine.
All right, everyone, that's all we have for you today. We hope you enjoyed that conversation with Ryan. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend you go check out his YouTube channel. He really does put out some great DIY content. As always, we appreciate you listening. Please be sure to give us a rating and help us grow the show. And until next time, enjoy the pursuit.